This is Tuesdays with Artificial Intelligence, with your host, Peter Ward.
Welcome to Tuesdays with Artificial Intelligence, or formerly Teams Tuesday. I'm the host, Peter Ward, and from Hoboken, New Jersey, and we've got a great guest, actually, Cole Kawani. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yourself, Peter?
Not too bad, actually, not too bad. The fall's coming in. September is here. I know you're based in Quebec. How cold does it actually get there?
It gets pretty cold. I know you had Sheena on a couple of weeks ago and Satish as well. They're in Toronto. I'd like to think that we get even our climate gets even colder in Montreal, unfortunately.
Right.
So well into the minuses with lots of snow. Yeah.
Okay. Now I know you started playing a bit of a band, like a funk soul band. Okay, so like, what are we doing here? Like bar mitzvahs, sort of like weddings, sort of like, what are we doing here?
We used to be a little more formal. We used to do weddings and some corporate gigs, but ever since COVID, things kind of slowed down a bit, and we have some change in members. So now it's more of an informal get together every week, have some beers, play music, and from time to time we'll have a show. So we're actually preparing one coming up. Yeah.
Okay, so what are we doing? Cover versions, original songs, coffee shop?
All covers, giving the people what they want. Fun songs to dance and follow. Yeah.
All right. Okay. You should have told me this before. You could have been like a rendition or something, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. All right, then. So a typical work day for you. You're very much involved in things like DevOps and APIs and like product teams. So with that being said, what in terms of the DevOps, who are your kind of clients?
Yeah, well, my clients at the end of the day, people that I'm personally serving is our dev team, mostly, and our customers. Our customers, we've been mainly focused these days a lot of migrating folks to Microsoft Teams. So large enterprises that have big complicated phone systems with many endpoints, and they want to move all that into Teams. A lot of folks, one of the big driving factors is a lot of folks have an E5 license, and they've potentially upgraded to E5 maybe some time ago, mainly driven from like security reasons, compliance reasons, but they're not really leveraging that phone system license. And so what's happening is that they're still paying for a legacy phone system, where they can just move that phone system onto Teams and leverage the E5 that includes phone systems. So our clients are primarily people that have Teams Phone or are looking to move to Teams Phone today. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Another big element of that, of course, is Copilot and AI,
Yep.
right? A lot of people want to take advantage of all the intelligence, intelligent recap and taking action items out of your calls and making sure that they reap the benefits of that. I think a little while ago, our company at Xero took a bit of the stance that like, hey, make every conversation count, right? Like too many conversations get lost or misaligned, they go nowhere. And so at our company, we took that mission to kind of change that, essentially. Ensure that every call, every meeting, every message leads to clarity, action, and progress. And it starts with having all your conversations happen in Teams, whether that's a phone call or a meeting, consolidate it all there and then slap Copilot on it.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things with Teams, like we've done a few migrations of so we say GoToMeeting and Zoom into Teams, and you've got things like information policies. That it's quite complicated stuff actually, because you've got global licenses, and also people love things like one feature when we did this was that people love the ability that when you went into a GoToMeeting, it would call your phone with a phone number, which is quite a nice touch. So it allowed you to get onto the call very easily. And people get very attached to the functionality.
Yeah, absolutely. That functionality exists in Teams too. Like you can have you can book a meeting and have people conference in with a PSTN number as well. And it's interesting what you're saying. People have habits, and some that are harder to break than others. A simple example I could think of is extension dialing. People with, lots of phones that are sprinkled a bit everywhere. In some cases, you'll speak to folks who are like, I can't remember the last time I dialed an extension. I just double click somebody's name and that's it. And everything is dialed by name now in Teams. But you have instances in manufacturing, healthcare, where hey, people are still, hey, there's a phone on the wall. There's a nurse station. There's a hallway phone there, and that hallway phone everybody knows as extension XYZ, and like that can't change, right? That is where you have to kind of say, okay, as we move these into phone system, like we have to support these kinds of use cases, right?
Yeah. Well, also you've got equipment in like Citrix equipment in the conference rooms as well.
Yes. MTRs are a big element of a migration as well, right? And making sure that your meeting rooms are phone enabled. That is also a big element of a migration to Teams for sure. Yeah.
Right. Yes, indeed. Yeah, and that's obviously, and there's also retraining as well of the engineers because they're Citrix certified, and of course they need to become more Teams certified, and you might get a bit of resistance going on there.
Oh my God, that is a big thing as well. It sometimes involves different teams, right? And that also happens, right? There are folks that are coming from an old Avaya, or you can say Citrix or Cisco or Mitel, and they're, that they have traditionally been the telephony team, but now they have to get to know Microsoft and Microsoft Teams and Entra, PowerShell, and this and that. And so we have our software platform helps with that. So not only does it help with migration, but it can also help with day two management, so that you could push this to folks that are traditional telephony folks that understand some of the telephony side of things, but don't necessarily understand all the intricacies of Entra and Teams. And you can even push that down to like non-technical folks to do the work, facilities managers, that kind of thing. So that is a big element of it as well, especially in a migration or a rollout. You're often talking to both people that have traditionally managed the telephony side of things, as well as those that are managing the Microsoft side. And a smaller org, it might be the same IT person, but in larger organizations, it's almost definitely not the same people.
So how do you deal with, let's say, legacy on-prem PBX systems?
Yeah.
Getting less and less, I know.
Yeah. I like to think that there are two different approaches to it. One is the more obvious one maybe is like just to burn it with fire. Let's get everybody off of it. Let's go. And we provide some really good tooling. I'd say the first thing that you want to do if you're moving off of an on-premises system is have a good assessment of what's there. Because if you just evaluate what's there and you move it all to Teams the way it was, it's just kind of garbage in, garbage out. Often that configuration that's sitting there has gone through 3-4 different administrators. It's just, there's lots of stuff that's there that's not used anymore that doesn't need to move over. Especially when you're talking about a phone system, people's calling habits have also changed. People that used to maybe pick up a phone and dial an extension are now having more and more Teams to Teams calls. So how many people out there actually still need a phone number or can go towards something that Microsoft has now that they push is called shared calling, where you can just kind of consolidate your costs of a phone system and put everybody under a single plan. There's also pay as you go, which is interesting, where you don't need to have a fixed cost per month. You just kind of pay per use. And so all these things factor in. And so the first approach is like, hey, let's embrace that this on-premises system is completely different than what we're doing moving to Teams. Let's assess what's there and move quickly to Teams. Mm-hmm. The second approach, I think, is people have taken. Sometimes they want to slow play it. They don't want to take the risks. They want to just do it a bit more slowly. And you can do what is known as a hybrid deployment. Microsoft does have a solution for this. It's called direct routing, where you can kind of you have your phone integrate to Teams through a session border controller. And maybe I'm going a little too deep here, but essentially you can have a legacy on-premises system integrated with Teams Phone. And so you can have some people that are still on a phone system on-premises and other folks on Teams, and they can communicate together just fine. I suppose it's kind of like what Microsoft did with Skype for Business and Teams, and you can kind of do the same thing there.
Right. The other thing as well, which we've had requests from, is that people want two phone numbers. They want they have an office in the UK, they have an office they work in the US. Okay, so basically the way we've got around this, and tell me if there's another way. Basically, there's another ID, so we say called, I don't know, user UK. When that phone number is called, it forwards to the US number, to the US account. Okay, yep. So people have because people just don't want to have two numbers and on that. That's the way. I don't know if there's a better way of doing that.
That's certainly a way to do it. There are different ways you can do that. You can also, some people I've seen it do, they've done it through unassigned number treatment rules. And so what that is you can say have a UK number that is flagged as an unassigned number that immediately forwards to another number. And so instead of having it tied to a UPN where it's going to be using a license, it's just a rule that is in Teams that says, hey, when somebody hits this number, immediately shoot it to this other account. It's popular. It's also used commonly if, let's say, somebody leaves the company and they want the manager to now receive those calls. So you can say, hey, this, any unassigned number from this location, send it to the receptionist, send it to the manager. So you can use that for secondary numbers. I think if it's a secondary number that's like shared across different people, let's say there's different people that want to share that UK line, you can create a queue for that. They also have the notion of like delegate lines now. I think multi-line, I've seen signs of it coming. I've seen the graph APIs change and the models now show lists of numbers on users. So I'm like, is that on the way? Maybe. I think multi-line is something that they are exploring.
All right, So let's just go into the demo here a little bit. Okay, so you're going to be talking about extracting Copilot generated meeting summaries, okay, using the Microsoft Graph API, which is actually pretty recent from my understanding with Microsoft, pretty back in build, I believe, back in May.
Yeah, when you Peter first reached out to me, I think you wanted to it was Teams Tuesdays, and I was like, oh yeah, let's prepare some stuff around Teams. And then I know this has been a reboot to Tuesdays with AI. So, So I as you reboot, I was like, let me come up with an example that was like recently introduced into Graph. And yes, at Microsoft Build, they did announce some new capabilities with the Graph API. So what I could do is maybe I'll just take a minute to kind of go over real fast what is the Graph API, and then dive into the example.
Go for it.
Yeah. So can you see? Yeah. And I'll speak loudly as well, because I know some of the folks here are going to be listening, even though I'm sharing this slide deck, some folks won't see it. So Graph is really, it's at the end of the day, it's a REST API. It's a RESTful API. And so any developer will understand what that means. It's basically a web-based API, and you can use any programming tool to code things against Graph. And think of any use case. It's really just anything you'd like to automate, and that's across any of Microsoft products. And I've seen folks build custom integrations to third-party tools like ServiceNow to automate tickets that come in or provision a service. I've seen folks build some pretty awesome custom scripts. The one that comes to mind right now is one from my friend and MVP, Martin Husser, who built an amazing script that visualizes auto attendance in Teams. People have built custom reports for license inventory. That's a screenshot that I posted right there from Roy Kluster on LinkedIn. He shared this script that just gives you this beautiful dashboard of your license inventory and your call log. So you can really build, at the end of the day, any solution using the Graph API. And so to get started, it is extensively documented at learn.microsoft.com. They do have an open API spec. So what that is it's a .yaml file. It's basically like, think of it like an XML or a JSON file. It just has all the specifications of the API that other third-party libraries know how to consume. So if you're using Python or Java or C# or whatever language, usually they have web libraries that will know how to consume that spec, and so you can build on it. There is an easy tool called the Graph Explorer, which I'll use today for my example, that allows you to explore the API. You can use Postman, PowerShell. It's really very, very flexible as an API. Use the tool that you want, and Graph really touches everything, whether it's your calendar, your groups, teams, tasks, chats. It goes a bit all over the place in the 365 ecosystem. For today's example, I was just going to go over some of the new beta APIs. So this slide is completely stolen from Microsoft's presentation from Ignite. Completely.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, copy pasted it. But everyone's been using, I mean, I can't believe that it's barely been, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years that we have intelligent recap in Teams. I use it every day, and I'm almost like, how did I ever live it? I don't remember a day that I wasn't using it. But how do I get these notes out of here? What if I want to, some common use cases, what if I want to shoot this to my favorite CRM, or I want to shoot these recaps and action items to a project management tool, or I want to provide, I don't know, a dashboard, or recaps of strategic meetings to management or senior leadership every week. So that's basically the use case I'm going to go over, and it's basically fetching your meeting insights out of a Teams meeting using the Graph API. And so what I'll do is I'll just do some step-by-step calls And I'll use the Graph Explorer for this and to just show how easy it is to use. So what you'll see here is, first of all, the Graph Explorer is very well documented, once again, at learn.microsoft.com. But the first call that you'll want to do, and there's a few steps to get your meeting insight out, is you'll want to find the meeting that you want the insights for. Now, you can look up meetings by date range, by the attendees, but there's all kinds of criterias. But what you'll see in this Graph Explorer here is that I'm doing a GET request, and I'm providing a subject to a weekly meeting that I have with our architects. It's called the Product and Architect Sync. And I'm just going to perform a GET here. And with the Graph Explorer, what's beautiful about it is, like, you can smoke test everything. You can see the access token if you need it. You can see the permissions that are required to make this call and consent to the permissions that are needed. So you can really, it's kind of, think of it, the Graph Explorer as a tool that not only lets you smoke test the APIs, but it's kind of it's marrying both the documentation and the smoke testing in one place. So it's kind of like, hey, get to know the API by actually calling it and using it. And so you could see quickly a JSON response with everything I want to know about this meeting. And the reason I did this is because even in the slides that were presented at Build, the example that they gave is you need to use the join URL to get the meeting ID to then get the insights. And so from here, you can get, there is a join URL. And so with that join URL, I can then do the next call, which is to just get the meeting ID with that join URL. And so I got the meeting ID, and slowly the domino pieces start to fall. With that, with that meeting ID, I can then, click, the thing is in the way of my clicker here. The next thing I can do is now I can make a call to that new beta endpoint. So I can call the new Copilot endpoint. Now, caveat here, I need to have, as a consumer of this API, I need to have a Copilot license to do this. But now with that meeting ID, I can do /beta/Copilot with my user ID and that meeting ID. I can go and get all the insights from the different meetings that I had. And if I want to get a specific meeting insight, action items and recaps, I could grab one of these IDs and make that call, and that's the last call. And you'll see here, now I have all my meeting notes. So, hey, on the last call on September, this was the call from September 2nd, we spoke about some enhancements to our product to detect misconfiguration policies and real-time policy detection. So all the recaps now are in a JSON format that I can programmatically grab and send anywhere I'd like. Maybe this was a sales call, right? And I want to put this in HubSpot or Salesforce, or maybe this was a conversation from a project and I need to shoot this into a project plan on Monday, or whatever other third-party tool I'm using. You can do all these fanciful things now with the Graph API. And so what I did is I went ahead and used Cursor, and I basically wrote a quick script. I kind of vibe coded it with a bunch of prompts, and I put this all together. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually just hard coding that example that I just went through. Hey, look for the meetings that contain, the product architect sync, and log in and generate me a table of all the insights from the past few meetings. And so I'll push play here, and we'll let it do its thing. What it's going to do, it's going to should open the browser. There we go. It's doing its thing. It's going to ask me to authenticate. I'm going to authenticate. It's in. Now it's churning through my meetings, finding that meeting with that subject, getting all the insights, and we'll give it a couple more seconds, and boom, it's basically exporting all those insights within seconds to a web page. So really fun stuff. Yeah. And this is all brand new as of May. Yeah.
Slick, actually, yes.
Yeah.
Nicely formatted as well.
Yeah, I mean, the formatting, the sorting, you can do whatever you want after that, right? And now you could do some of this stuff, of course, with Copilot, right? Like, you can ask Copilot, hey, tell me the notes from my meetings last week, summarize them, tell me who said what. All these things are possible, but sometimes there's just like a level of automation that you want to do, or exporting into a third-party tool that Copilot that will require a bit of coding, and that's where using Graph and the REST APIs become very powerful. Also, if you're ever looking at building a third-party enterprise app, this is where you can start thinking about building a real dashboard or an app that does all kinds of fanciful things above of what prompting Copilot can do.
Have you?
Yeah.
On that note, does it track sentiment like
yeah, great question.
There was a little bit of aggression on, I don't mean,
Yeah.
the way of doing it. Yes.
So that's big in contact center, right? Sentiment analysis is a big thing. Not that I've seen. I could be wrong. I've been wrong many times. I haven't seen anything that gives me sentiments on these calls from Copilot. I know Dynamics Contact Center has that capability. So, and there are plenty of other third-party tools that will do that. So what I've seen other tools do, and there's some with compliance recording, what they'll do is they'll record the calls, and instead of leaning on Copilot's analysis of the call, and what you can do is grab the raw recording or grab the raw transcript and pass that through another AI interpreter that is capable of doing sentiment analysis. And then, so you could totally do that. Those 4 steps that I did, what you would do in that case, imagine, is look at the meeting, grab the raw transcript, like all the text, or even grab the recording, and then put that into another AI engine that is capable of doing sentiment analysis. And there are third-party products that do that tremendously well. So yes, it's capable, not with the example that I was just showing with those Copilot APIs. I didn't, the one that's built in with the Copilot API does not seem to have any sentiment variables in there.
Right.
Another thing to just watch out for, and this leads to like a second example, and we're speaking about Teams automation, is not everything is 100% available in Graph. Okay, some things you are still stuck having to go to the Teams PowerShell module. And so there are use cases that you can do in Graph, but there's still some use cases that require another library known as the PowerShell module, things like policy assignment, phone number assignments. Spoiler alert, some of it has moved to Graph. Very recently, you could now get the Teams configurations out of Graph. And so I think there is a self-awareness, I guess, at Microsoft that they know and they want everything to be in Graph. They think of Graph as their API that should touch everything 365, but there are certain things in Teams specifically that you need to use the Teams PowerShell module. And at that point, you are using their PowerShell SDK. It is not a web-based API, and you're calling some PowerShell scripts. I have a second example of that real fast that I could quickly show, but in this second example, what I'm doing is I'm using the Teams PowerShell module to export all the phone numbers from a Teams environment. And so let me just share here real fast. Okay, so what you're seeing here is you're going to see some PowerShell code here now where I'm connecting to Microsoft Teams, and I'm doing a get CS online user, which was one of the commands to get the user details. And I'm saying list all the phone numbers in Teams. In PowerShell, those are known as line URIs. And so if we run this guy here, you'll see that what it does is it connects, and it's going to build me, it's eventually going to load the browser and build me a table of users and phone numbers. Now, this isn't a demo environment, so the data you're seeing here is not real production data. I should say that I've had an online recording once that got torn down because there were phone numbers there. I'm like, these are not real phone numbers. Don't worry. But it just goes to show that sometimes if you're talking about automating something specifically with Teams, depending on your use case, you could maybe do it with Graph, but you might require using the Teams PowerShell module. Not everything is available in Graph. The last thing I'll mention, and it's an important concept when you're using Graph or the Teams PowerShell module, is around authentication. You'll notice that this app, when it ran, it didn't ask me to sign in. When I ran the other one, the one that gave me about the meeting insights, and I clicked play on it, it opened the browser and it asked me to identify myself. And then it went and got the meeting insights. That is because the new beta APIs, they're only available for a delegate flow. And what a delegate flow means is the app is not capable of doing it on its own. It needs to be able to do it on behalf of the signed in user. And so that concept is an important one to understand. There are 2 ways to authenticate to Teams or Graph with these APIs. There's an application authentication, an application flow, and a delegate flow. And so at a very, very high level, the difference between delegate versus app permissions is a delegate access is where you're saying, hey, I'm going to connect to this tenant. I'm going to connect to Teams, and I'm going and by the way, this is a concept that is in Microsoft land, but this is also a very common concept with any web app that's doing an OAuth flow. So you can have what is known as delegated access, which is the user needs to have permissions to do whatever it's doing, and the app too needs to be granted that permission, and the app will request the user to sign in and then make those changes on behalf of that user. So when I went and got my AI recaps, what happened is I had granted the Graph PowerShell module permissions for delegates to sign in, and they have access to their own calendars. So of course, then I'm a user, I have access to my own calendar, I have access to my own AI recaps, so the app is able to go and fetch those recaps on my behalf. In that second example, the app didn't ask me to sign in. It's doing its own it's able to go on its own behalf to go and export the phone numbers of users. What we're doing there, and for some developers will be familiar with this concept, this is where I'm going to give it an application ID and a secret, and you're going to sign into the app as that app and perform those changes or read that information as the app. And so what it boils down to at a high level is think of delegated permissions where it's really web, mobile, single sign-on. In the consumer world, this is very common. We were talking about Spotify earlier. Hey, sign in in my Spotify using my Facebook account, sign into this app using my Gmail account. That is where you're providing, a certain level of access to your account with that third-party identity provider, but you're using delegated permissions. And so you're making changes on behalf of that user. With an app permission, you want the app to be able to run independently. And so you're saying, hey, this thing is going to run on a schedule, not even maybe a web app. It could be literally a scheduled job, a cron job. It needs to be able to run completely on its own, and it needs to run as itself. And so those are the two ways you can connect to the environment. And both the Teams PowerShell module and Graph support both these methods of sign-up. We could talk for like an hour about that stuff, app registration, service principles, and I don't want to go super deep, but there's actually an amazing walkthrough by John Saville, and he does a fantastic job at explaining this. He even says at the beginning of the video that he might struggle at explaining it, but if you ever want to learn more, I would highly recommend that YouTube video.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So very quickly, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can easily find me on LinkedIn. That is probably the best spot to reach out and chat with me. Carl Caruani again, or you can find me on my blog at easy365.io.
All right, I'll put that in the chat. Carl, very insightful here, actually. Oh, so this is a good subject as well. Personally, I'm quite interested in this as well, because all roads are going to the Microsoft Graph. Yeah,
exactly. I know I can get a little excited and maybe go a little too deep. So don't hesitate to just reach out to me if you have any questions. Like, happy to dive in further in any direction. Yeah.
That's all right. Okay, I'm putting you in the chat. People want to hit you up. All right, Carl, pleasure.
Yes.
And hopefully I'll see you around.
All right. Likewise, Peter. Always a pleasure.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.